What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Dr. Homebrew. I'm excited for today's show because we have longtime friend Barry from Lucky Envelope Brewing up in Seattle, Washington, as Tasty used to say. Barry, welcome, dude. Welcome to the show. This is your first time being on our show. You've been on the session a couple times, I think, right?
Just once on the session, but
Once on the
yeah,
session.
super stoked to be on Dr. Homebrew.
Yeah, man, Barry's a good dude. If you guys, I've always said if you're in Seattle, go over to Ruben's Brews first, and get a couple good beers, and then go, if you have time, just drive by Lucky Envelope and just wave. You don't have to go in waving. Just wait, just run, pop in, tell Barry we said hi, and then leave, and then go back to Ruben's Brews.
Leave the car running. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do that.
Barry's making some very, very good beer over the past few years. And he's gracious enough to send me some, and so I'm like, you know what, we need to get Barry on the show because Barry, number one, listens to the show, which is very weird and distressing for most people probably in his life. But I wanted to see what knowledge he can impart on us, and he said, well, here, I actually have beers for you to take and to drink and to give me feedback on, and specifically, this is a collab beer you did, Barry, right, with a couple friends of the show. Who's this beer?
Yeah. Yeah, this is a beer that we brewed with Dave Marliave from New Spring. Oh, I should correct it and say New Springs because no, he hates it when I call it New Springs. And
That's all I'm gonna do from now on. Then.
oh, I know
Thank you
that's
for
the most
giving me
important
that.
thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And Warren Billups.
There we go, Beardy.
Oh,
Yeah,
Warren.
at Angora. So that's his brewery distillery that's in progress.
Oh,
You
I
know,
didn't even know it had a name.
Yeah, so that's the one on the side of the can, and that was the fun one that we wanted, that I thought would be a pretty cool discussion because everybody talks about competitions being, just as much a packaging competition as a beer competition, and we had it in the tank and we just canned it off on, right around the time that JP sent me the email. So I figured I could bottle some the way that we send beers off to competitions, and then I can also just give a can to sample.
Yeah, I think it'd be great.
It's a great idea.
That's really geeky. I like it.
Oh yeah, totally. I'm trying to get these data points, and then so I'm glad that everybody volunteered to be test specimens.
I gotta say, Barry, I don't know. Maybe it's the 480p camera you have, but you look younger, man. You look
Oh.
good. Good to see you.
It's already like 30 minutes past my
Is it
bedtime.
a
so
filter?
creepy,
Yeah.
but-
What's going on?
Filter?
It's the
Yeah.
smoothing
I need to go get
filter.
a second glass if we're going to
Yeah.
do side by side here.
Yeah,
I'll be
Barry's
right back.
26. He's been
Yeah.
brewing since he was 12,
Yep.
and he just knows everything about it. Yeah, I'm excited about it, man. I think this would be cool. And this is called Swiss Army Beer, and it's an Alpine Red Lager.
Yeah.
What's an Alpine Red Lager?
I don't know. No. Yeah, I was just discussing it with Brian Cooper, and this was a fun beer. Okay. That's a fun beer that we came up with a recipe, and then we were trying to figure out some fun ways to make it interesting for people. And what we ended up the recipe we decided on was it was like a red lager that we brewed with lager yeast from the Herleman Brewery in Switzerland. So
Okay.
so with that, we're just trying to think of some interesting names, and that's where the Alpine Red Lager came into play, just because of the Swiss Alps. And
Sure.
that's kind of where that whole thing came from. And then the logo design is very reminiscent of the Swiss flag and all that. So it was just it was an excuse for the three of us to finally brew together, because we've been talking about it for 5-6 years, and it finally came together. And Dave had some free time because he was preoccupied with some things for some reason. I don't know why. And
Yeah,
and
that lawsuit.
and
Now he's half a millionaire.
yeah, exactly.
Paid out.
And then Warren was able to get some time out with with his kid, and being able to balance that life out. So it just came together, and we wanted to brew a beer, and we were just looking for any excuse, and the Swiss Army Beer Alpine Red Lager was what happened.
Born. Yeah, well, I snuck a quick sip. It's very good. It's
Oh.
very
Yeah.
toasty.
Yeah.
And I've always loved red ales, man. I wish they would make a comeback. And I think part of the problem is no one knew really how to brew them. So you get a lot of red ales that are just super caramely.
Yep.
A lot of crystal malts, and it just sort of fucking killed it. It was just bad. But
Yeah.
you get a nice, decently brewed red lager or red ale in general. So good. I love it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, so we have a hand bottled version and we have the canned version.
Yep. I'm going to step out and get my bottle opener because I forgot to bring it over.
Oh,
And per our communications yesterday, I did a score sheet for the bottled one with noting some differences between what I may have perceived between the canned version, and I think Cooper may have done a score sheet also, or at least to have some notes about that.
Cool. Well, Shar, why don't you start off then? Because,
all right.
Basically, just to clarify, Bear, you want to know a bunch of stuff, but mainly if there's a difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
So what I did, Barry, is I did a score sheet for the bottled version and noted any differences that I could tell between that and the canned version that were perceptible. So I went through in category 34C. This is sort of a brand new specialty, experimental beer, which I appreciate. The bottle inspection, bottle was great size. Fill level was good. There was a hiss when I opened it up, so the bottling went well. Aroma, it's got a medium to medium high malty aroma. It has to me a medium leathery note in a good way, in a way that a really good Syrah has kind of a leathery character to it. It's not like a brand new out of the store, oh, it smells funky type of thing, but more like you think of maybe a comfortable leather chair that you've set on for a while. Not like the aroma that might get from you, but the fact that it kind of gets softer and more comfortable. There is sort of an aroma to that when I learned about wine, I was told that's sort of a leathery character. Some red wines get. It's related to the toasty that JP was talking about. I don't know that I would call it roasty or toasty, but it's maybe in that family, if that makes sense. But it's a very unique aroma, which I really like. It's the bottled version to me maybe has slightly less aroma overall than the canned version. And by less, it's probably in the 10% range, which I thought was interesting. But probably because the can, once you seal it, that thing is hermetically sealed. Nothing's getting in or out. That may be the reason. I don't know. But I couldn't detect any difference in character of the aroma between the bottled and the canned one. So I give the aroma 9 out of 12. Appearance 3 out of 3. It's dark amber, light brown color. It might even be in the medium brown territory, but it's the color is what I would think of for a red lager. Orange highlights, crystal clear. The head is low and persistent. And frankly, I thought that the head was similar, but right when I poured them both, and I poured them both at the same time, the bottled sample had a little more persistence and a little more head than the canned one.
Yeah,
which
same
was
thing. That's what.
Yeah,
you can see which one's the bottled one, and
that's interesting. And I have no idea, from a scientific or engineering standpoint, why that would happen. I just find that fascinating. So,
agreed.
Coop may have some better perspective on that than I do, but flavor wise, this beer tastes amazing. Flavor starts with a medium malt with that kind of toasty, leathery malt character that's just so wonderful. Bitterness comes up in mid palate to balance, but bitterness is not super high, but it's it doesn't overwhelm the malt, but I think it's right there where it needs to be. It's well attenuated. The finish is long and balanced. The impression that I had when I poured these of the bottled one had a little bit more bitterness in the finish. And kind of coming back to this, let's see what I think. Well, nothing like live guy drinking beer live on air.
It's great audio,
but it really is. But
hey man,
and actually,
they've been doing it that way for 10 fucking years. I can't get them to stop. So at this point, you just embrace it.
Yes, I will embrace the drinking beer. Just 4 guys drinking beer on air.
Yeah, man, who cares?
No, and as they warm up some, I think that the difference in bitterness is not really there. Again, it wasn't a giant difference. It was in 10-15% in the finish, maybe. But as they warm up, I'm not really tasting much of a difference with that. Flavors, again, at 16 out of 20. Mouthfeel 5 out of 5, body's medium, carbonation's medium. There's a slight warming that may have come from the fact this is the third sample that I had in judging tonight. So sometimes that happens. It's neither creamy nor astringent, but it's perky.
This card tastes great.
Yeah, I'm going to eat some more of this paper. The bottled version has maybe a little bit more body in my perception, and maybe slightly smaller bubbles. But again, we're talking, these are very minor differences. But I did find that interesting, that to me, and it's consistent even as it warms in my perception. The bottle one has slightly more body. 5 out of 5. Overall impression, 9 out of 10 for a total of 42. I really like this beer a lot. It's creative and new and really different. And I appreciate you guys sharing this beer. I really like it. I don't really know how you'd make this better. I made a note, you might want to mash with some of Warren's beard hair, kind of like Tasty and the dog hair, but I don't know, the FDA or TTB or somebody might not be terribly keen on beard hair in the mash. But there are some subtle differences between the canned the canned sample, the sample that I poured from the can, the sample that I poured from the bottle, but I don't think they were extensive. And the biggest one, like you were showing the camera a minute ago, was the head. Mm-hmm. The head is probably the biggest difference. And frankly, from the standpoint of sending that to GABF, you're probably always better off with more head than less head. So to the extent there's a difference, it's probably working in your favor.
Mm-hmm. Which was which, Barry, in those glasses? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. The one on the right side of the screen is this one. This one is the one poured from a bottle. And then this one's poured from the can. So,
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there's something in the can liner that might be affecting the head retention, but
I have heard that theory before.
Interesting.
Because this beer has plenty of crystal malt, like not plenty, but has a decent amount of crystal malt in there, or whatever, a couple percent, which definitely helps that head retention go. But maybe that's one of the things I've always noticed from the cans is that the head, like it fades pretty quick. But
interesting.
Yeah, one of the notes I was curious about, especially with this red lager, is did you pick up on any oxidation? Oh, I mean, I haven't let Brian Cooper speak, so I can
okay.
I can just shut up right now because
that's okay. I'm not. I'm just going to comment generally. I agree with a lot of what Brian said, and I think that as far as amber lagers go, there's in the style guidelines, there's international amber lager and there's Czech amber lager. I would say this plays a lot more like the Czech version, which to me is more characterful and a richer beer, as opposed to the light or the amber, international amber lager, which can be adjunct laden, mass produced beer. I mean, the Czech ones are, pretty big. They don't get distributed as far as some of the international amber lagers, but Dos Equis or whatever. But this is a really enjoyable beer, and I like the way it's playing. It's not too sweet. It's nice and dry, but it also has some caramelly and I would say maybe some dark Munich-y or not even edging on roast, but like a nice richness to it that makes it a real nice sipper. In this time of year in the colder months to sip something that has a little body and heft to it, but it's not 10% alcohol. Between the two samples, they both taste and smell really, really similar. The head difference is noted. I think that the bottled version might be just slightly more carbonated because it is a little spritzier and it's a little more not biting, but it has a little slightly sharper presentation, whereas the canned version, it comes across just a touch sweeter, but it's just a minor difference in either the carbonation or the way that the head is being retained. But the two taste really, really similar. There's no oxidation, nothing odd in either of these.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
But yeah,
hear.
I like the dryness.
I would agree with that.
and the flavor, the malt flavors come through nicely, but there's also a nice hop flavor here too. It's got like a floral and little spicy hop presentation. Yeah, just really works well.
Cool.
I would agree with the score that Brian gave it. So, yeah, I don't have too much more to add. What do you think, JP?
Think of 42.
Yeah, 42, 43. It's good.
Okay. All right.
Really good.
Well, I will take that. That's kind of awesome.
What do I think? You guys both sort of commented that the canned version is a little more carbonated. No, the bottle version is a little more carbonated than the canned version.
Yeah.
I find the opposite.
Yeah.
So maybe that's due to just a little bit of tiny bit of bottle variation. The bottled version seems a little smoother to me.
I was just trying to split hairs. It's really hard to tell much difference.
That's what he wants. That's what we're here for, right? So I don't mind that. I don't fault you for being you, and being what your mouth is trained to. I don't know, whatever. Now the beer's kicking in. So now I'm being inappropriate.
Now it's just getting weird in here.
Yeah, the canned version to me is a little bit more. I think Cooper, you called it in the last show the attack. The attack is a little bit more, forceful. There's a little more bitterness to it. There's a little more oomph to it. There's a little more pop. But I think I prefer the bottle version. It is a little smoother. There's no oxidation. I couldn't tell you the difference between the two. There's no. I don't detect a flaw. So whatever Barry's mass amount of assistants have been doing to do this while he's been on his yacht and on vacation, they've been doing a good job.
Yeah,
I don't detect anything weird or funky. But there is a slight variation comparatively, and I think I like the bottle version a little bit. It's a little more rounder. I think the canned version, maybe the bitterness just comes off a little bit more than the bottled. But excuse me, Barry, talk to us a little bit about this beer. Are we answering your questions first of all?
Yeah, no, this is good to hear because what I was going to allude to earlier was there was talk about the like kind of the red ales and there's not a lot of really great examples that you can get from around the country and these like just because of age that shows up so easily in these beers and as a brewery that packages our beer like oxidation DO is our like what I'm trying to avoid at all costs and when we're packaging our beers the cans they're all open atmosphere canning, so they do have a couple seconds where they are exposed to the air. I mean, obviously you have a foam cap on it before the lid goes on, things like that. So we do definitely get some pickup there. But when we bottle it, I bottled it the exact same way I do it for competitions using a beer gun and going through all sorts of hoops to make sure that we're trying to reduce as much oxygen in the package as far as even going as far as like I will like I'll dip the bottles in sanitizer, rinse it out, but I will rinse it with some beer because in that sanitizer you still have 8 ppm of oxygen in those couple drops, which can add up. So I was just trying to see if there might be a difference in the perception, but I with those red ales, red beers in general, I think those when they get oxidized, that caramelly sweetness can get overboard, and it can even get kind of that metallic-y penny character, which is just not pleasant. But when they're done well, or when you can get them fresh, I really enjoy them, and that's like kind of the things that I'm always going through in my head, and where am I splitting hairs that are worthwhile, and where are we doing things that like just might be excessive that you don't get much benefit out of. But no, I'm glad to hear that because I don't it's probably spent a day and a half kind of ambient temperature, probably in the 50s, and when we send our beers off to competition, especially for like GABF, they sit in those coolers, which my understanding is that they're not like sitting there at 35-40 degrees. They're sitting at 50ish degrees, which for several weeks, and that's I think that's where a lot of the damage is done. But then in those competitions and where I see them, like the oxidation doesn't necessarily come off as it doesn't come off as papery, or you might not even get that change in color, but you'll just get that amplified sweetness in there, and the
Mm-hmm.
beers can taste kind of flabby. So that's, in my head, that's kind of where I'm going. Like, was like if any characters of the muddiness came through, like especially in the canned beer, that's kind of where I was expecting it to come from. But if they're presenting pretty similar, that's very encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think in that regard it is, but I wonder if would oxidation or oxygen presence, because I don't even want to call it oxidation, I guess at this point, because I don't really, it's not a flaw, but would that account for at least what I'm perceiving the difference between the canned and the bottle in the hop flavor? For me, the can is a little bit more bitter, a little more aggressive than the bottle. Is that reason because maybe some oxygen got in the bottle and kind of did its magic and just happened to work out, or what do you think?
Is that directed to me, or is that directed
I don't
to
know, man. Anybody, who cares?
I mean,
Whoever
yeah,
wants to talk.
I would kind of lean to it actually. Like, if you get that oxidation, it kind of muddies it up, so you might not be able to taste it as much. I mean, I see that in as much in IPAs. I mean, that's amplified significantly, but yeah, when you get the ones that are slightly oxidized, you just get a little bit of that, like, it almost, like, even if the IPA doesn't have any crystal malt in it, you can it almost tastes like there's crystal, but then that hop character just gets muddied and it's not as intense.
I think that makes sense to me, because one of the ways that oxidation can come through is sort of a honey character, and that tends to be extreme oxidation. That's not something that you're hopefully going to see, between your brewery and the time someone buys that and takes it home. But there's there's a spectrum from no oxidation to, you're eating a 6-pack carrier of cardboard, or from no oxidation to you're drinking a thing of honey. There's a spectrum in there, and sweetness is in that spectrum, right? I mean, honey has kind of a sweet perception, and if you're going to be, let's say it sits out someplace warm for a year, and you're going to drink it, and it's going to be cloying honey, just nasty. That stuff that doesn't all come at the end of a year. That takes place, a day at a time while it's sitting somewhere warm. So you break that down to, okay, it'll be half that honey-like, or a quarter, or a tenth, and somewhere you're in the start of that process, and it's going to be sweet rather than just that honey, that clear honey oxidation character. Does that make sense at all?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're on the right track with that. That makes a lot of sense to me. But I don't get, to the extent I get any sweetness off of either of these beers, it's not sweetness that I would consider either oxidation or under attenuation. It's just malt sweetness.
Well, I think too, oxidation of the melanoidins, the Maillard byproducts in a darker, a richer, maltier beer can express as a sherry-like character. It's not going to go straight to sherry, but a little bit of a sherry-like aspect in the beer that might be what's giving it that slightly sweeter honey-like impression, or just a little off, and then it twists. I know what you're talking about exactly when you talk about that. The penny-like, it's not like a metallic necessarily, but it's like a biting, like the malt goes from being just pleasant and smooth and rounded to just being like harsh and gritty and biting and just a little gnarly. So yeah, I don't know. It can go a lot of different directions, but I'm not getting any negative oxidation in either of these samples. It's just clean beer.
It's cool. Yeah, I mean, the recipe was actually one of the more complex beers that we did, and
Yeah,
I
can we
think
get that?
yeah, I mean, it was it's like about 30% Pilsner malt, and we actually split it between Weyermann Barca Pilsner and Weyermann regular Pilsner.
Huh.
And then about 10%, these aren't going to add up to 100 because I don't have the actual percentages in front of me, but about 10% Munich 1, actually 20% Munich 1, Weyermann Munich 1, another 30% Weyermann Vienna malt, about 2.5% Weyermann Cara Red. So that's the crystal malt that we have in there. It's about it's like what, a 35 Lovibond crystal.
Mhm.
The
And
German
then
crystal.
yep, German crystal, and then 16 pounds, so about a percent, maybe just over percent of Weyermann Carafa Special 2, which is the dehusked roasted malt from
I
that.
wonder if
Nice.
there might be a little like just to give the color, get that
Yes.
dehusked. That
Yep,
you
and that was
gives
and then yep, so we threw that in. It's more than we usually throw in, but then also Warren, being Warren, had a fun idea of making us do extra work, and we pre-ground it and then we threw it in on top of the it was just a mash, late mash Vorloff
right. You don't want to add it
addition.
the whole way through the mash, but
Yep.
just at the end, just to get that color and it pulls
Yep, just to
through.
get the color, and then
I like that approach.
yeah, and then like a percent, 1.5% acidulated Weyermann sour malt, just to get that pH down to that 5.3 level.
I feel like I could tell Warren in that. Like when you were talking about the malts in Vienna, I was like, that sounds like something Warren would contribute. I don't know why.
He makes a good lager.
He does,
Yeah,
but I'm
he
like, I don't
does.
know. Just it seems like that. I don't know. Sometimes you can kind of tell people who make shit, and you're like, oh, this sounds exactly like something that this guy would do. Like Vienna malt sounds exactly like something Warren would be like. Well, I really think we should do that.
Yeah, he was fighting for a little less Carafa, and then Dave was fighting for more. So we split the difference, and then I think Warren was going for more crystal, and then Warren wanted no crystal, so I split a bag in half. So there was some compromise going in there.
The collabs
And then
go, man.
yeah, and
Did
then
Warren and Dave like start pushing each other and like, no you, and have like a little slap fight or anything?
I mean,
I would love that.
anything to happen, anything to make incidental contact cool. So no, it was a great time. We we just hung out, and it was fun. But
that sounds like a great time.
And the band is still together. Like when you guys get together and drink this beer together, you all enjoy it. I hope, because
we haven't had that opportunity yet.
Oh,
but
man.
I would like to. I know that, but it was really cool when we did the packaging, because Warren and his dad came out, and they were helping to stack flats and all that. So that was a lot of fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What yeast did you use? Oh, you sorry.
Yeah, yeast. We did. We used Fermentus S189.
Okay.
So that's the Hurleman yeast that they use there, and for us we do 15 barrel batches. So it comes in 500-gram bricks. So we did three bricks that we rehydrated and threw in. So and then
rehydrate. Okay.
Yep.
I know some people don't, and there's a I don't know if there's a debate anymore. I guess
There,
but kind of like
yeah,
whatever you want to do.
For most of our beers, we don't rehydrate for like our ales, IPAs, and anything that's a little warmer. But I feel like for lagers, we get better performance from the yeast if we do we fill a keg with a brink with water from our hot liquor tank, and then we cool it down, and then we'll rehydrate in there, and then just push it in the tank after or in the middle of knockout. But yeah, just there. I don't think it's necessary, but for us, I think I found I personally feel like I get better performance for lagers, things that are fermented a little colder, things that undergo a little bit more stress. So like even if we in those chances that we have to do like a barley wine or like a high alcohol beer and we don't have fresh yeast available, I will rehydrate that yeast too.
Got to baby it a little bit for those journeys that they're going to go through.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then for like a 15, like the hops are pretty minimal. But for 15 barrel batch, I mean, we did a first wort hop of a pound of Saphir and a pound of Hallertau Mittelfrüh. We just did that for shits and giggles. 2.5 pounds of Magnum, which that all equates to about 25 IBUs total. And actually no, that's probably closer to 20 IBUs. And then we did 5 minutes at the before 5-minute boil, 2 pounds of Saphir and 2 pounds of Mittelfrüh. So we kind of did treat it like a German Pilsner in terms of the hopping schedule, and didn't go too crazy.
Balance. Yeah.
It's kind of it's almost like Vienna Lager-esque.
Yes.
Yeah.
Light Vienna Lager.
Yeah. It's in I would agree that it's in that family. It's in that range.
Like it's definitely 40% or something like that. Like you can kind of oh yeah, I guess yeah.
Yeah, that's another amberish lager. That's true.
That's why I like it so much.
It's very good.
Yeah, it's a
It's
cool beer, man.
rich, like rich maltiness and really good balance altogether.
I was curious too, because I know that especially as it warms up, but are you picking up any any fruity esters or anything that might come from the yeast? Like, you can get some of that pear, but like even that red apple note. Sometimes we get comments of those in our judging sheets, but I've never used S189 before, so
When you say red apple, yes, but I don't know if it's because you implanted it into my brain.
I shouldn't have done that. That was bad.
With
bad blind tasting.
That's not all I get, because it's funny because like I'm pouring it. You go, yeah. Do you get any esters like pear? I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. And you go, or red apple. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it is. It's not pear, so I can't tell you.
No, it's not.
No,
not very estery at all. There's
no.
Yeah. That was kind of my opinion of this yeast. Is it definitely ferments a lot, a good bit cleaner than 3470. When subjected to similar fermentation conditions.
Yeah.
I mean, we fermented the same way, 52 degrees for day one until we see some activity. Then we'll bump up to 53, and then it'll do its thing. But
and red apple, to me, I don't get any of that at all. And that to me also has an astringent component to it. When someone mentions that it's not just a flavor, that there's something that's maybe astringent might be the wrong word, but there's maybe a slight bitterness or a slight astringency to a red apple.
Like
a sharpness.
Skin.
And that's definitely not present. And I'm not getting, I like JP, when you mentioned that, I'm straining to taste the red apple, that red apple skin, but I tried not to talk myself into it. You can talk yourself into a lot of things when you hear it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, especially in college.
Yeah.
You said red apple, and it's less red apple skin, but sometimes the flesh of a red apple, you can be kind of mealy.
Yeah.
That's like an aroma that I can sort of find. Or if I was going to go red apple, if I was going to agree, I would be like, yeah, but just the flesh of the apple itself. But had you not said it, I would be like, no, not really.
God, I shouldn't have said anything. I'm so stupid.
You're so dumb. God,
Barry,
hang up on uninstall.
It's your first time on Dr. Homebrew and you're talking about red apple skin.
We just keep JP because he's the host and he does all the editing for us, but it really has no palate. We can't account for taste.
No, half the time I just have a taste wheel and I throw a dart at it. I go, sulfur, bitch. I don't know. Yeah, this beer is really cool. It is, and like Shar was saying, it is kind of creative and unique and different in the space. How are your customers reacting to it? How's the general public feel about it?
I think they're liking it so far.
Nice.
I mean,
it sounds like a dumb question, but like I'm always curious about like when something comes out that's not a fucking pastry stout or an IPA. I want to know how people feel about it, especially if something that they don't really know what it is, and you have to learn and search for what it like. Alpine Red Lager. People are gonna. I don't know what that is.
No.
But are people creative enough, or I don't know, enough of an explorer in the beer to be like, yeah, let's try the new thing and let's see and we enjoy it, and it's not like anything we've ever had before.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are, and we do release every year a Vienna lager that's received kind of really well by both our customers, but also like critically too. That's how it's done well. So when they come in and they ask like what's an Alpine Red Lager, and we can say that it's pretty similar to our Vienna lager, just kind of amped up a little bit. There's a little more malt character, a little more crystal in there, and we use a different yeast which comes from Switzerland, so therefore we call it an Alpine Red Lager, and that kind of that answers their questions. And but
that's enough.
If they need like a quick answer, or they don't really care too much about beers, we just say it's a red lager. It's a multi red lager, so it's drier and cleaner than a red ale, than a red ale. And
I wouldn't discount people though, because consumers are getting a lot more discerning and understanding of different lager styles and there's a thirst for it. There's for a well-crafted lager and something like this. You can.
Yeah, when we first opened in 2015, our number one question is what's a Hell's lager? And
Does
that
it
was
come
that.
from hell?
I know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes,
no, it's just
true.
German for light. But
We
now
actually, it's a
Hell's are
collab
everywhere.
with the Satanic Church, and it's called Hell.
Yeah.
Is that a segue? Because we have some of your Hellas.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we do.
We also have the Italian pills.
Yeah, we're gonna drink the Italian pills in the next segment, and I feel like the
Yeah.
Hell is just for funsies, which again I appreciate. If we're done with this, we're gonna take a break. What do you guys think?
I think breaks are
Good?
great.
All right.
It's
Good idea.
Rules. Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about judging. Barry has done all kinds of judging. We're going to talk about some differences between commercial judging and homebrew judging, how we can sort of, I don't want to say game the system, but this is how you can cheat to win. If you want 50-point beers, stay tuned to the next segment. So hang on, everyone. It's Dr. Homebrew. We'll be right back. All right. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. We are back here with Barry from Lucky Envelope Brewing in Seattle. If you are in the Seattle area, seek them out. Go to their brewery, check it out. It's great beer, great space, good brewer. You know what I mean? But Barry, you have been judging beers for a while now, and you sort of do the homebrew circuit and the commercial beer circuit. And so I want to talk a little bit to you about the differences between the judging and how judgings are necessarily even just run between homebrewing and commercial, but more importantly, how we were talking at the break is how you can really stand out in a commercial setting. We know how to do it as a home brewer, sort of. I mean, you kind of have an idea of how to do it. Like maybe you need to tweak it a little bit to be, if you're doing a lager, maybe it needs to be, a little bit more bitter or, whatever, right? But as a commercial brewer, from what I hear, mainly from Sully, is that you have it seems like the flights in commercial competitions are larger.
Correct.
The score sheets are a little bit different. So as a judge, how do you pace yourself? And then also as a brewer on the other side of that, how do you have confidence entering a competition going, I could be one of like 25. How do you stand out in something like that?
Yeah, I mean, you're totally correct. I mean, yeah, so like my background was I started out like I went through the BJCP training through with Mark Emily and Peter Twig. They're master BJCP judges up in the Pacific Northwest, and I learned so much from them and went through the course that they held, and so that's kind of where my basis for judging was. And when you go through a BJCP competition, there's definitely an emphasis on like notes, writing, fill that space, get all those comments in there, and make sure you get what you taste, but you have your progression of what you go through, your appearance, your aroma, because that's the most fleeting, and then the flavor and all that stuff, and then also revisiting your beers. And I think the biggest difference between the BJCB homebrew competitions and professional competitions it's you're not necessarily trying to you're describing what you're tasting. You're not trying to give advice, or like, if you did this, then you might want to try this, or like, if you're getting oxidation, you might want to try to reduce pickup. It's just kind of, this is what I taste, this is what I'm getting, and then like your overall comments, and then whether it moved on or not. And like what you said, the competitions are like, you might have 50, 100. If you go to GABF, you'll have 200-300 beers in a category.
Yeah.
Your speed is definitely of the essence. You're gonna
Okay. Is it
So-
like two judges per flight, and you're doing 100 beers, or that seems impossible?
No. They still subdivide it into rounds. But what I've noticed is, at like in most BJCP competitions I've done, and it kind of grows a little bit when you get into NHC, but I think most rounds are limited to kind of like eight beers in a flight. And if you have IPAs and you have 50 beers in that category, you'll have a couple rounds, and then you can whittle it down. Then you have the mini best of show, and you move things on. But for like the professional competitions, it's not uncommon to have like up to 12 beers in a flight. And when you have that, I mean, there's a significantly higher amount of luck that's involved, and just you know, there's a lot of variance that can happen, and you know, you, you'll see it at the competitions at all levels. But then there's sometimes you just have to, if you start butting heads with a judge, not like in a bad way, but you just start disagreeing or whatever. A lot of times you can just have to find a happy medium. But of course, you always think that you're right, but it just depends on like who's going to give and take. But
I would definitely be like, yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Yep, I get that too.
Yeah, but
I don't know, man. I'm gonna push over with stuff like that.
I think what I've noticed though is like, at least for me, which is encouraging, is the I feel like the era of the table bully has kind of gone by the wayside, and there is a lot more compromising going on.
I totally agree with that.
That's interesting you say the table bully, because it sort of brings me back to a lot of early competitions in like the late 90s, early 2000s, that there seemed to be that one person who knew everything. And then everybody would make fun of that person behind their back because they were fucking annoying. Like,
exactly.
Okay, yeah, here's this you got to judge with, dude, sorry, that sucks for you. But I'm glad to see that people, and I wonder why that is. Maybe people just kind of like chilled out a little bit, like it's not that serious,
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you're going through that many beers, and if you have 7-8 beers on a table, and you're gonna pass 2 or 1, if there's like somebody that's really likes a beer and another person that really doesn't like that beer, is that beer going to do well in the next round or not, versus another beer that you both kind of like, and another one that one person really likes, another person likes a fair amount, or whatever. You just have to look at that, like, okay, we kind of find the common ground, work together, don't die on the hill for something, but listen to the other person, and if they might have a valid point, oh yeah, okay, this maybe does have a little diacetyl or whatever it might be. And some people have to know their blind spots and be sensitive to, okay, I don't have the greatest detection of diacetyl, but I can detect phenolics like crazy, so let's just go in knowing that, and then be reasonable and listen.
So sometimes it's less about what that specific thing that you're arguing about, be it red apple or whatever, right? It just came to me, I don't know why.
Right. And well, in the score sheets you get back on a commercial competition are like much more brief.
Right.
Just, if you get 5 words on the sheet, you're lucky, right?
You're lucky, yeah. But it's less about that specific thing that you're arguing about and more about the overall sum of the parts. Where like you're saying, is this beer going to do well? Even let's say I get my way, is it still going to even do well? And you have to like think about that a little bit more too. I've never really thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
Never thought about it that way.
Yeah. And then there's definitely a lot more, I feel like there's a lot more referencing the style guidelines in terms of like very hard at some point, because when you're doing those competitions, especially in the later rounds, like there are minuscule differences between the beers, and at some point like you got to differentiate your beers. And I know that that happened for me when we didn't enter GABF this past year for other reasons, but I was doing like a second or third round of Hellas, and the style guideline themselves, like they said like body medium, and then you look at it and you realize, wait, if you look at international examples, especially the ones in Germany, the body of those beers are not medium; they are medium light, maybe medium, but and that's where I at one point I caught myself like falling on that, like, no, the beers and the Hellas that you get in Germany, they'll be medium light. They're not going to be medium bodied. And but like, what are the style guidelines saying? You're like, shoot.
Yeah.
But then of course, like they always offer the opportunities for feedback. So I did send feedback there, and I don't know if I was the only one, but I had a conversation with Chuck Skypeck there, and he's like, yeah, that's true. And they ended up changing the body description, I think medium light to medium in terms of character for that. So like the style guidelines aren't perfect, but you have to judge those style guidelines. But I think that's right. Yeah.
So yeah, activism works, is what you're saying.
Yeah, just voice, like your opinions are valid, and but if you don't let people know what your opinions are, then it's just it's just going to go die by the wayside. So if if you have something constructive to say, then give your feedback, and if they have any questions, they'll come back. Like it's pretty simple, and
Mhm.
little proactivity never hurt anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're deciding to enter a beer, when you're deciding to enter beer for competitions, are you brewing for the competition? Because I've heard some brewers talk about that on the session years ago, where it's like, oh, we would normally make this pale ale, but we tweak it for competition because we know that it's just going to get lost somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do that, or are you sort of like, what's on the board, what's in the tank is what's going to competition?
Yeah, we don't necessarily tailor our beers towards the competitions. I know people that do that, and I think that's absolutely a way that you need to work it. But for us, it's like a lot of the beers that we enter end up being lagers. So for the most part, like if you make a beer specifically for competition, like what are you gonna do to a Helles? You're gonna make it
Make it better? I
yeah,
don't know.
what are you
Yeah.
gonna do with your Vienna lager? But like, we have done things like in the past where like we will like our Vienna lager, we kind of brew in anticipation of the fall, but we know that GABF competition entries are due in August, so we'll brew it in July and ship it out for August. But then that also coincides with our season, so that's kind of the way that we approach it. But I can absolutely see it, especially for hoppy beers. But it also depends on the like a lot of the breweries that do that. They might have additional capacity, or they're just like, yeah, if they're specifically brewing for it, they might just make a special IPA with like more hops or more hop product or
Do it on
something
a
along those lines. But
pilot system versus their main
yeah,
brewery.
yeah,
Yeah.
and those are very valid ways to do it. I don't fault anybody for doing that way because it's a commercially sold product.
Yeah.
You're
Some
no
IP,
it's You have the same right to brew a one barrel batch as somebody who has a one barrel batch. That's their main system or anything like that.
yeah. With
But
IPAs, they might time it to the day. Like we're gonna brew it on this
yes,
day, so it's gonna be
yeah,
ideal.
yep. But then also there's especially with IPAs because those beers can sit on the like in the warehouse for 2-3 weeks. So I know some people who had people that have had success too in the Seattle area where they will package their beers very green, and you're just like,
Mhm.
well, fingers crossed that it falls out and all that, but you see some of the folks that are winning, and if that's a strategy they take, it seems to work very well. So like I know especially with the hoppy beers, like the earlier you can package it, the better. In terms of trying to preserve that hop character, but then you also see that double-edged sword of, well, if it's not fully done, then you can get those diacetyl bombs in there.
Mm.
And I was fortunate when it like judging a GABF. I don't think we had too many. I think it might have been like 2 or 3 in a flight of 12 that had a little bit of diacetyl in there. But I've heard instances where you like, especially before all the hop creep talk
They dry hopped it in the
started.
can. Let's add
Yeah.
1 pellet of hops to each
Yep.
can. Get that extra.
Yep.
Oh, but you got hop creep. Sorry.
But yeah. So, but then a lot of times you definitely could pull diacetyl from that. But I think people have changed their processes on a professional level to kind of avoid that diacetyl. But you know, when you're in those competitions, like first round, I feel like that's pretty easy to you know uh to quote a great man, the cream rises to the top. Um, but the like you'll notice most of the flaws get knocked out in the first round. So
Yeah.
and but so diacetyl, DMS, uh, but I think the biggest flavor that I noticed that would knock beers out was oxidation. So I think it definitely harkens back to my comment. There's that the adage where beer competitions are just as much packaging competitions as they are brewing competitions, and going back to homebrew competitions, I feel like so many of them are local, and like you're dropping it off at a homebrew store who will keep it cold, and they'll ship it immediately to the brewery where they host it and they keep it in the cold room. So they're kept pretty well. But then once you get to that regional and national level of NHC, but a lot of the uh, professional competitions, you're shipping your beers off to, you know, a couple states away. You're shipping it to Denver. That's a lot of damage can be done there. So
Yeah.
a lot of that gets amplified through the shipping process, and then you don't even account for the process of holding. So those flavors of oxidation that like you'll get some of the ones that just come out a little more honey-like, a little more sweetness, but then you'll definitely get more oxidated, just that papery, or you'll just see that brown hazy IPA come through. You're like, oh, I'm so sorry.
This was probably good.
Yeah. And
That's two knocks against it, you know, or actually three.
Mhm.
I wonder how commercial competitions would differ, or how they would change if they were treated like homebrew competitions, where you had a first round, and then you had the choice to rebrew it or whatever. You know what I mean? Because commercial competitions are like, here's the beer and it's all done, and like that's it. It's like basically one. You said there's different rounds within the thing, but it's like you ship one set of beer, and if you make it, you make it. If you don't.
So I think GABF takes place over the course of like 3 weekends now, right?
yeah.
Cool.
There's 3 phases. So the first 2 phases it's like 6 days, so 3 days each, and and then like there is one phase right before the festival. So that's the way the layout was this year. So it's crazy because I think I don't know if many brewers realize how exhausting judging can be, and when you're doing it that way, I mean, you're like each phase 1 and phase 2 were like 3 days sessions, or 3 days per, and then you look at your list and you have six flights, 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon.
Yep.
We work so hard, I don't think that the people out there know it, what we really go through in this. Like they think we're just out there like, oh, they just go drink beer together and like talk shit about it and have fun, and it's jovial and fun, and no, it's mind-bendingly difficult.
It is exhausting, because I did 3 days of phase 1 last year, not this year, and it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. I met some great people. I hope I get to do it again sometime. But man, on the second day, I was so exhausted. I got on the little shuttle back to the hotel. I had a little bit of food. It was like 6:30 or 7 o'clock. I went to bed. I was like, I can't. Do I want to do anything? And like, no, I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed. I slept for like 11 hours and got up and did it the next day, because I was just that wiped out after. I mean, you're not drunk, and that's the thing. You don't drink enough. You drink a lot of beer, but it's spread out a little bit at a time. 6 flights, 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon. By the time that day is over, your body is just exhausted. I'm old. Some people were like, we're going to go to the, brew works down in Denver. And like, God, no, I can't do that, guys. You have a good time. There's no way.
It's funny.
I'm not going to make it.
Walking around GABF, like Friday night, Saturday night, you can tell, well, not Saturday night, I guess, but like Friday night, Thursday night, you can tell the people who have been judging, because they're fucking zombies. They're just like, God. And like, Jamil, he would be doing a lot of judging, and Jamil always wears his, like, I don't know, his energy level on his face. He's one of those people. And you can tell when that man is tired, because he just looks fucked. Like, that's the only way to describe it. And it's like, oh, you were judging it. Yeah. But you know what? He pushes through, and he was out, drinking, at least having a beer, because he's a very social guy. But it's like that kind of thing. Yeah. And judging is difficult, and it is weird. The only time I ever judged the Sam Adams long shot one year is like right after I got my, certificate or whatever, my recognition, my recognition. I was recognized, whatever.
I see you. I see you.
And, you show up, and it was in Oakland. I'm like, okay, cool. We go get the 12 rounds of whatever the fuck long shot. I was like, okay, cool. And I think it was at that point, it was mixed. So there was no like specific category. Can't remember. And I'm like, oh man. And then we broke for lunch, and I was like, all right, cool. That was awesome. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Like, well, yeah, that's cool. The second round will start in like an hour. I'm like,
but wait, there's more.
What do you mean the second round? No one. That's why I had to go. Like, I had something to do. I was like, I can't stay. I was fucking tired. 12 beers. I was done.
Yep.
I felt like an asshole.
It's so physically and mentally taxing.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I've never judged a commercial competition of that scale. I've judged commercial comps before, but not GABF or any of the other really big ones. But the year that we did NHC homebrew competition, all, both rounds all in one over the course of 3 days of judging. and it was brutal. Like there were morning and middle day and afternoon, almost evening. Like it was like all day and then all day the next day and then all day the third day.
Yeah.
And I was like, and at some points I just wanted to give up and leave the room. And I'm like, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to these entrants because my palate is completely blown. But it's like you say, there is some luck of the draw of, what comes earlier and is good versus what comes later and is really good. I can't tell if this is really good anymore. I get done with all of that and I'm like, oh, good, I can finally go to a talk. So I went to a talk my buddy's friend was doing, and I'm in there and my cell phone buzzes. Then it's Bruce Berger, and he's like, oh, I meant to ask you earlier, but do you want to do the best of show? I'd never judged NHC best of show before. So I'm like, it was an honor.
Well, you have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a 30-minute break and I'll be right there. So, wandered back over and there was a little bit of time in between and we reset and did the 34 beers or whatever it was, but it was just like, wow, that I felt like I went through a marathon and I don't, it's hard. It still was fun, but it is a challenge and you want to, a well-organized competition is not going to do a disservice to the entrant where you keep those flights smaller, have breaks built in, and like Brian was saying, you drink a lot of beer, but it's spread over a long time, and it's small samples. So,
well, I think that's why we always hammer home the point of become a beer judge. Like there's always a need for beer judges, so things like this don't happen, because that is the worst part, And like when I was doing the more beer comp, the homebrew comp, I was trying to get more judges than we need because number one, I didn't want to be there for too long, but also like because I knew how it felt. Like I don't want to sit and force 15, 16 beers down people's throats. You know what I mean? If you have 6 in a flight, that's my goal. Because it is hard. It is taxing. And I mean, even doing this show by the 4th beer, you're like, oh man, what am I really tasting? I have no idea. And luckily I'm not doing a score sheet, which is why I think the Bryans do sheets beforehand.
Yeah.
Get it out of the way. So then, whatever.
Then we can kind of talk a little more about it, have a little fun, and we're not just trying to do all the work of perception while we're on air, which that's not great radio either, right? It's not great podcasting. If we're kind of sitting there thinking and going, and writing stuff down, that's people are going to tune that out right away.
Yeah,
right.
Well, and Barry, what you were saying about it being more, not more, but just as much or just as important as a packaging competition as a beer competition, is that the number one takeaway that you can kind of give people, like commercial or homebrew? Like you can have an okay beer, but your packaging has to be on par because that could potentially push an okay beer through.
Yep, it'll definitely boot you off in the first, if not second round, depending on the category. But like it's kind of amazing at how nitpicky you can actually get when you have a flight of very good beers that, like if you're having individual beers, you're like, okay, this is a good beer, this is a good beer, this is a good beer. But then once you have, you narrow it down to like 8 beers that have make it to second or third round of a competition. They're all good beers. And then like at that point you're nitpicking details and, you're getting at bitterness, like you're getting at the fine points of the bitterness. Like, is it a smooth bitterness? Is it a harsh bitterness? Like you definitely start comparing astringencies. And I think that's where a lot of our comments will come from is esters. Like whether they're appropriate or not, like they start popping once you get to those later rounds. And that can make or break a beer, but it also depends on the flight of judges that not just the beers, but the flight of judges that you have, and what are they going to focus on? If there's a judge who wants to bring out something, and then everybody starts focusing on that one specific character of a beer or in the entire flight, like for me, I'd probably get annoyingly like tonight I'd be talking about esters and what are you getting? What are you getting? What are you getting?
Red apple skin. Yeah, exactly.
They start that there you getting, but somebody might be super obsessed about mouthfeel or like astringency and like what's husky and what's astringent and what's grainy. And, so a lot of it can depend on how the conversation gets steered on a flight too, but it's kind of amazing. Like, once you like eliminate those beers that, poorly packaged. Like oxidation, I've learned to get pretty good at, where you can just like, nope, it's sweet and it's muddy, oxidized, and that's an easy kick out.
Yep.
Or just say like it doesn't advance to the next round. But it's like I know that there's a good beer under there, and like so like that always makes it on my comments like if it's worthy. Like it seems like a poorly packaged beer. Really, the quality, the beer itself tastes pretty good, but yeah, there's just once you just have this, like once you get a set silo, or not silo, but like a very focused, filtered set of beers, like everything starts popping, and there's definitely a good bit of luck, but then that's when you're hard referencing those style guidelines too. You're like, does this fit the guidelines? Does this fit this? And then also what we talked about earlier is, will it make it onto the next, like how will it do in the next round? So everybody might have a favorite beer, but is like, if the beer's out of style, like will it get booted out in the next round too? Like,
Yeah.
so
Sometimes you get
in
like
the competition.
a beer that really wows you and it's really interesting. And it's like, oh wow, it's like got this wonderful tropical, but also diesel-y, hop character to it. And then the other judge is like, I just can't stand diesel. I hate it. And I'm just like, and everybody perceives things differently. So you got to think, okay, is my like love for this beer that, comes across as tropical with a little diesel gonna, when it gets to the next round, it tastes like a can of diesel fuel to the next round of judges. Is it gonna really go on? I have to let it go or whatever.
Yeah. This is the beer that Mad Max drinks.
Right. You're talking about packaging. It's like I don't golf, but my dad loves to. My dad's a golfer. He's golfed for 40, 50 years. He's 80 plus years old. He still goes once a week. And he always would say a thing that stuck with me, which is you drive for show and you putt for dough, which is the driving is the drive is the showy part. It's the fun part. Like, ooh, I hit this ball super far and I got it close. But what makes you win tournaments and games and stuff is getting that last bit from your drive into the hole. Yeah. And it's not the most fun part. It's probably the least fun part is putting, because that's the part that's easy to fuck up and it's easy to not get in the hole and to mess up. But that's kind of like packaging. It's not the most fun part. The showy part is making a beer that tastes great. Right. The part that's not showy, but the part that gets you to win, whether it's a beer competition or a golf game or whatever, is that last bit that isn't fun, that's hard to do, but it gets you there.
Well, but also the finesse of like taking something like a Munich Helles, and dialing it in, getting the finesse right. Like
exactly.
Really, really excellent Munich Helles versus just a very good, excellent Munich Helles. Like, how do you take it to world class? And how do you keep it fresh in the packaging so it presents well there at the judges' table? Yeah.
And that's like world class is you have to do every aspect of it right. Right. To win something huge like GABF and to be world class, you got to have great recipes. You got to have great brewing process. You have to have great packaging process. All of that has to fire on all cylinders. And there's not really, in my mind, there's not really a magic bullet. You have to do at least good on all those things. And the better you can do on all those things, the more likely you're going to be to win. That's just, you got to execute as best as you can on everything.
Think about how many beers we've had on this show that fail in packaging for one reason or another. Undercarbonated.
All the time.
Oxidation. But I think a lot of the time it's funny, like doing this over, I don't know what, Cooper, 10 years?
Yeah, we're finishing out our 10th year. Started in 2013.
Beers have gotten so much better over time. And, before, it's oxidation or it's just weird, the bottle funk or whatever. But now I think the most constant packaging error is just carbonation, which is great.
And we talk about it constantly on the show.
Yeah.
All the time. I'd say at least once every 2 episodes, maybe, if we don't do it then, we talk about carbonation constantly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important. Let's wrap this up real quick. I want to take a break. I want to come back and while we wrap the show, I want to talk about this Italian Pilsner we're drinking from Lucky Envelope. So hang on, everyone. It's a set. Jesus Christ. It's Dr. Homebrew. It's not the session at all.
No.
You can tell because it's only an hour. So hang on, everyone. We'll be right back.
Dr. Session.
Thanks for sticking around, everybody. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We're wrapping up here with Barry from Lucky Envelope Brewing in Seattle, Washington. And throughout this whole conversation, we've been drinking the Italian Pilsner. Barry, what's up with this beer, man? I like it a lot. It's very clean, very see, I think basic is too, it's not correct, but I guess in terms of a Pilsner, maybe it's right. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a beer we've done several versions of, but our Italian Pilsner, I mean, that's kind of one of the new hot styles that have come out in the last few years, and I really love it. But the best way I've heard it described is it's effectively a German Pilsner with Italian flair, and kind of the simplified version of it is it's a dry hopped German Pilsner. But I think it's definitely I find it to be a style which requires a little bit of finesse and more restraint, especially in the dry hop. But breweries being breweries in the United States, I think they go a little heavy, which I don't think it's bad, but but I think if when you start hopping at 1 to 2 pounds a barrel for an Italian Pilsner, I think it creeps into that West Coast Pilsner category versus the Italian Pilsner, which is a little more, in my opinion. And if you taste Beerifico's their Italian Pilsner, it's definitely a little more delicate of a beer, but it's very simple in terms of how we approach it, and it's it's all Weyermann Ericlea malt, which is their Italian grown barley, and we do it's about 30 IBU, but we do a light first wort hop in there, about 1.5 pounds for 15 barrels. We'll do a 3-pound 60-minute edition of German Magnum, and then a Whirlpool, like a 4-pound Whirlpool of Hallertau, Herzbrucker, but you can use any continental hop for that. And then we do like 0.5 pound per barrel of a dry hop. So it's it's a very, very light, but I think especially with when you use continental noble hops, they carry in a very different manner when you use it in low levels versus higher.
That is such, I mean, this beer is almost fucking water. It's almost clear. Like the color, what is that, like half an SRM?
Yeah.
I've genuinely never seen a beer that has this much body and this much character. It's almost 6%. This, like, I don't know, man.
It's 5%. Yeah. You can't read. It's too dark in your room.
It's 5.0.
5.0. I like I thought the slash in the O was like an 8. I was like, oh shit.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
It's extremely dry. It's got a nice crackery Pils malt character alongside a really bright like geranium. Like it's declared on the can, but I was getting it in spades, like that floral character. The geraniol is really coming through from those hops. And when you amp them up like that and do it right in the Whirlpool, they can play that way. I got a touch of sulfur in the nose, but it blew off really quick. And but yeah, and once it gets into the flavors, it's that dry. It's a really drinkable summer beer that you just easily, sip a lot of on a hot day. But
even now, I mean, it's like
now it's
4 degrees outside. It's raining here, and this is perfect. It's great. I got a cat on my lap and a bladder full of urine. Like this is a perfect night.
And it's really well lagered.
What could be better?
Despite being fairly heavily hopped, there's still not a lot to hide behind here. If there was a big flaw in it, it would poke right through. So I think even though the hops are the showcase here, it's not over hopped, and the malt still does play a part. It does have that nice crackery and a little or that the can declares a little honey like, might be again the power of suggestion, not in an oxidized way, but like a little sweetness to it that gives it a little a wider range of malt flavors than you might get in some beers this light. It's a really fun beer.
Yeah, it's really this is such a wonderful Pilsner in just so many ways, and I just have to agree with everything that Coop just said.
I think that it is, it didn't throw up a massive head. I guess, sometimes the lighter beers the head can fade a little more quickly, but I think a little more carbonation could help drive it even a little bit more, but it's great as it is. So
Yeah, good job. I love it.
Thanks.
And
Yeah.
so you were saying earlier that you're more of a lager focused brewery.
I would like to be more lager focused. Yes. That's kind of where I geek out.
Yeah.
Where I like to go over the top in terms of processes, and that's where, getting that 90% there doesn't take that much effort. It's compared to the last like 5-10% to kind of get your beer where it wants to be. And I love geeking out on that part with you know just trying to reduce oxidation on, especially on the cold side, but you know, just paying attention to things like pH and gravities and everything, just every step of the process, documenting things every step of the way. So I love that. I love the minutia of just trying to tweak those lagers where, you know, the vast majority of people won't be able to tell it on a day-to-day difference. But when you kind of look at it in big picture, you can definitely start noticing trends and kind of seeing where things go. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Do you take more pleasure in the customers going, hey, I've sort of noticed that this lager tastes a little more crackery or whatever, or a fellow brewer or beer judge coming in going, hey, and like detailing the nuances that sort of reinforce the things that you're doing? Does that make sense? Is that a weird question?
ideally both would happen.
Well, right.
Yeah. But I feel like we definitely get more of the constructive feedback or positive feedback from folks in the industry. I know customers definitely appreciate the beers, and especially the ones that come in regularly. They will pick out things here and there to make some small changes, and I think that's super cool.
Yeah.
But
I guess it's harder on the as a customer, because you don't want to sound like a fucking know-it-all.
mm-hmm.
Like I would have a hard time going into a place where I would be a regular at and going like, oh, I noticed that the fucking difference of the thing or whatever. And then probably when industry people come in, there's more of a, I don't know, unspoken thing of like, hey, I need to comment on. So maybe it's a little skewed. Yeah.
Yeah, and it also depends on the relationship that you have. Like, if the
Yeah.
customer happens to be a beer enthusiast too, I make sure to like let them know, kind of like what I did to you, is like, just tear this beer apart. Like, I want to make it better. I need, so like, what kind of feedback do you have? And I do that with people, brewers and judges that come through and all that stuff. And we get people that visit from around the country just based on where we are in our neighborhood, but also like September, October is just a wonderful time to meet people from around the country, because they're flying into Seattle for hop selection, and then they're just gonna go. They will spend like an afternoon in the Ballard neighborhood and visit like all these breweries, and like you see them, like it's like a group of 3 people with the same brewery shirt on. You're like, hey, hop selection here. Do you want to chat? Like if they have time, if they're not here like just to cap to get a beer before they head to the airport. But you can always find those people, and you meet a lot of awesome folks that way. So
yeah,
we're super lucky.
Anyone with cargo shorts and sandals.
Yeah, cargo shorts, sandals, and either a sweatshirt or a work shirt, with the brewery name on. You're like, hey,
come on in, taste this.
September, October, you should brew a beer, a light lager, and just call it "I'm here for hop selection."
I'm here for the hops.
Yep.
Barry, thanks for taking the time, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for sending the beer. We still have a Helles to drink, but we'll just drink that for funsies. This Italian Pilsner is great. I like the Swiss Army beer, despite your brewing collaborators.
Yeah, a bunch of
efforts to tank it. I think you pulled it out. I think I could really tell that. Yeah.
No, I really appreciate the time, and Brian and Jason, thank you for just arranging it all and trying the beers in advance, and for the very constructive feedback.
Oh,
next time we're up there,
thanks for your time, and thanks for the beer.
Yeah.
Taste some of the lagers there at the brewery with you if we get the chance.
Yeah,
would be a lot of fun. So
please reach
that'll
out
be great.
if you're around. Please reach out, and I'd be happy to show you around, and can give you recommendations and other stuff in Seattle.
sounds great.
Don't do that. Just the same. Just Lucky Envelope. That's it. Barry has a tent in the back.
Yep.
Sleep in. This is Airbnb. He rents out.
Yep.
$200 a night. It's great.
Yep. and then just eat at McDonald's. It's fine.
Yeah.
If you want to be on the show and be as cool as Barry is currently, go to brian@thebrewingnetwork.com and whatever email device you choose to use, and he will get you set up. We have openings for whatever fermented products you have. Also, last show I branched into cocktails. Why not? If you want to send us a canned cocktail, if you're working on canned cocktails, which is a new thing, sort of, I don't know.
Or send us a lager. That is
Sake?
this,
Sake.
yeah.
I like sake. Send some sake.
Dude, I had this. Okay, just real quick. I had this liquor the other day. I got it for Christmas, actually, for my brother-in-law. I don't know the name of it, but Shar, you just reminded me. Japanese Bermuto. Here's the label. It's very blown out. It is a vermouth essentially, but made with sake. Yeah, you can't see it, but made with sake instead of wine.
That's really interesting.
And then
that makes sense because vermouth is kind of like a spiced wine.
Right.
And if you took sake and you put in like some Japanese spices or something, that could be like really cool.
It's then it's spiced with like yuzu, not uzo, yuzu. There you go. Yeah, Bermudo.
That sounds really cool.
With local citrus, bitters, and spices from indigenous herbs. So check that out. I don't know what made me think of that, but
I'll have to check it out. I'll be there in February.
Yeah,
cool.
Are you going to Japan in February?
Yeah,
dude.
Oh, super cool.
Nice.
Where are you going?
We'll be in Tokyo.
Nice.
Yeah, 10 days, but all in Tokyo just to wander around.
All in Tokyo.
That'll be awesome.
I feel like it's not even enough.
No, it's not.
Right
You
on.
know?
Yeah.
God,
It's one of the biggest cities in the world, and there's a billion things to do. I mean, you could probably be in Tokyo for a year and not see all there you'd want to see.
Oh. Are you? Do you have breweries planned out? Any stand-ups you want to?
No. This is a family trip, so but no. Well, I'm gonna go meet with Jason at Devilcraft because he does some of our distribution out there and all that. But Devilcraft, they make really good beer, and we were there in 2022 I was there for a work trip without the family, but there's a couple breweries that we'll probably hit up, but I think it's mostly gonna be eating and just getting whatever beer you get at the ramen place and
man, forget about it.
But I think I gotta check out that Bermudo stuff.
Yeah, I'll send you the picture of it. First of all, the label's wild. It's just cool.
So
but,
cool.
It's such a good, and you can like drink it on your own. Like vermouth, I don't really feel like you can just sip.
Yeah.
Some people do. It's not a thing I like to do.
No, well, they're Italians. They're a little. It's like
unlike the Greeks.
Well, yeah, no, the Greeks are perfect. Are you kidding me? You understand what you? It's almost like a more intense, more rounded bodied, like a citrus vodka kind of thing. I don't know. I'm doing it a disservice, but I could see it like
interesting
fashion. You can drink it straight. Anyway, we're gonna get at it, everybody. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. See, you guys just get a podcast and you can just ramble on to your friends about nothing.
Yeah,
exactly.
And if you can trust the bottom of this can, Luigi is the cooler brother. That's kind of
shit.
Great little quote there. We were just playing
I love
Super Mario Brothers Wonder today with my kid. We had some fun on that.
Brewer
I play as Luigi, by the way. So
around. Oh, you got to, man.
My daughter got a Switch for Christmas, so I got her one, and she's got Mario Kart, so she's got to finish getting that set up, and got to get her all Mario'd up there.
Do the Shine Thief battle. That's the funnest, man.
I learned a couple months ago that people go, "Oh, it's a me, Mario." Apparently, like he's not saying it's me, Mario. He's saying Itsumi, I guess, which is Japanese for super. So he's been saying Super Mario the whole time, but we hear it as it's me, Mario.
That's how I would always hear that.
Yeah, but apparently it's like Itsumi.
Huh.
I don't know.
The more you know.
The more you know. All right, everybody, we're out of here. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.